These are the best settings for Call of Duty Black Ops 6 to improve your gameplay. I've been playing Black Ops 6 for the past 3 hours to get you as much information as possible so you can get the best performance out of the game. Starting with controller settings, here's what we're going to be using. When it comes to the button layout, I currently am using a Battle Beaver controller with 2 buttons on the back. My left button is going to allow me to jump, my right button is going to allow me to slide. So I play default, and I'm currently not playing claw, so I typically take my thumb off the controller so I can reload and press Y. But I play the default button layout and I flip it. When you play flipped, it essentially takes your aiming and shooting from the triggers and puts them up here, so it's a little bit easier to access. For me personally, I feel like I react much quicker when I play flipped. As for sensitivity, the most basic sense I recommend everybody start out on is 661. I think it's incredible. I would not recommend going over 8.0, and if 661 feels good, but your accuracy is just not there, I recommend adding a low zoom of 0.9. I definitely want to recommend you turn off your controller vibration unless you really like that. Most people, 99% of people, I would say, shut that off immediately. And when it comes to your dead zones, I'm rocking the exact same dead zones that I did on Modern Warfare 3. I turn my left stick minimum all the way down to 0, my right stick minimum all the way down to 0. And if you do so and you have a lot of stick drift, just increase it by 1 increment until your stick drift is fully gone. Now, I do put my left stick max down to 50 because I'm running automatic tack sprint, which I'll get to in a little bit. When you put your left stick max down to 50, you're going to be able to start sprinting a little bit quicker. Moving over to the aiming tab, the sensitivity multiplier is where you're going to be able to decrease your ADS from a 1.0 if 661 is feeling a little too shaky with your shots, down to a 0.9. You can see, obviously, we have the multipliers for your ADS. You can adjust it for your tablet, air vehicles, ground vehicles, and also your third person. I just leave everything standard. Scrolling down, you got to make sure that your target aim assist is on, assuming you're on controller. If you're on mouse and key, you of course don't get aim assist, but you do have aimbot. Shut your motion sensor behavior off and ignore the advanced settings. Moving over to movement, this is key. You must turn your tactical sprint assist on. Typically, it's going to be off. You don't want it to be on. You want to have the setting tactical sprint assist on. This is going to give you the best movement while you're moving around BO6. If your sprint assist delay isn't on 0, I highly recommend you throw that on. And then I love having the sprint assist sideways and backwards so you can dolphin dive with ease in any direction you're trying to go. When it comes to mantling, there was a lot of issues in past versions of Call of Duty, so I shut this bad boy off as of right now. You can throw on the low mantle assist if you feel like you want a little bit of extra help, but I'm so used to just getting it done myself, clicking the contextual jump button to be able to mantle, that I like to have it off. If it's just not good enough for you, I highly recommend the low mantle assist. You don't want to have it just on because you're going to start mantling things all the time and it's going to start getting you killed in gunfights. Crouch assist, this is something you should do manually. That way you're not accidentally messing up your shots when you're trying to aim. Corner slicing, I would say, is personal preference. This is something I think is pretty cool. It makes me feel like I'm almost playing Rainbow Six Siege. I feel like it doesn't really mess with your aim in any way at all. It's a visual thing. That's why it's preference. At the end of the day, I like it. Slide and dive behavior is huge. Personally, I really recommend you try to get used to hybrid. For me, it took a while to get used to hybrid. I had to sit in private match for, I think, 1 or 2 hours just practicing hybrid because you're going to start dolphin diving randomly in gunfights if you're not used to being light on your sticks. However, when it comes to your gameplay and becoming a better player, being on hybrid is going to really elevate your gameplay. If you just can't get it done, I recommend you try slide only. For the rest of the settings under movement, I left everything default. I didn't think that there was really much to change. Parachute, automatic behavior. Obviously, we're playing BO6 right now. We're not in Warzone. I like to throw it on free fall. If you're Stone Mountain, you might throw parachute auto deploy on. Mantle cancels reload. I like this. You might not. This is another setting that's personal preference. If you know that you got bullets in the mag and somebody catches you off guard, you're mantling, it's going to cancel your reload so you can get back into the battle as fast as possible. Moving over to the combat tab, most of the stuff here is going to be completely default. I do recommend for Warzone, you leave your armor plate behavior on apply all. I think default, it's on apply 1. It's just going to make it a lot easier when you're in battles and you're trying to finesse enemies or potentially squads to just be able to click that armor plate one time and get all of them in, rather than just sitting there holding it, running, trying to have good movement, bobbing and weaving, and potentially getting yourself killed. I'm also going to give you my graphic settings for the best visibility in-game. When it comes to graphics, it really depends on your rig, but one thing for sure is you should be on full screen exclusive. Depending on your monitor, you want to make sure that your refresh rate is as high as possible so you can have crisp, clear gameplay. Assuming you're using a NVIDIA graphics card, highly recommend on plus boost for the low latency. That way you can really flick and snap onto your targets, and the rest is default. I do not recommend high dynamic range at this time. Under the quality tab, most of this stuff is very similar to what I used in the last Call of Duty. Your render resolution is going to be, of course, whatever your monitor is going to be. I do use the custom graphics preset. That way I can adjust the upscaling to Fidelity Cast so you can get a sharper image while gaming. For the VRAM, I'm throwing it on 80. You can see on the bottom right hand of the screen your estimated VRAM usage. You want to stay... Oh, that's cool. I recommend you stay below the target so your PC doesn't have any issues running the game. When it comes to texture resolution, I like to throw it on normal because it gives so much better clarity in game, especially seeing enemies from distance. When you're on normal compared to very low, it's going to be a lot easier to spot those enemies. Depth of field is something you got to make sure is shut off as well. It's basically going to make it so when you're shooting, you're going to be able to see your opponents to your left and right with no blur very clearly. I notice a lot of people have this on, and it just makes it a little bit tougher when you're battling, you're moving around, to notice other players coming at you. For the rest of the quality settings, most of them I pretty much just left alone, left them on standard. Moving on to the view, this is one of my favorite sections for the graphics. I throw my field of view instantly on 120. Now, depending on what kind of monitor you have or how used to 120 you really are, I might recommend throwing it on 115 or potentially 110, but I wouldn't go lower than that. The reason why you might lower your FOV is because on controller, if you're losing aim assist a lot, playing on 110 to 115, somewhere within that range, is going to give you a more consistent aim assist so you can really track your targets. For your ADS field of view, you want to be unaffected. I like to throw my weapon field of view on wide. I feel like it just allows you to see more on the screen. Third person of field of view, it's 90. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day. And then you got to make sure you turn these two settings off. World motion blur and weapon motion blur. Turn those bad boys off immediately so you don't have weird visuals while you're trying to run around the map. In addition to that, make sure that your first-person camera movement and third-person camera movement are both on 50%. That's as low as it can go. It's going to take away some of that shake when you're in gunfights. And then we have our audio settings. Under audio, you want your master gain volume on 100%. I turn the music volume down all the way. That way you can really hear small little things in game, whether someone's stepping on leaves or stepping on metal. It makes it a lot easier to not have extra background noise that's not really adding to the game in your ear. For the dialogue volume, obviously you got to know what's going to be happening if the announcer says something, but turning that down to 50, I feel like is the perfect middle ground so you can still hear the dialogue, but it's not overpowering the extra audio and footsteps around you. For your effects, make sure it's on 100. Your effects is going to be where you're hearing all the important sound cues. And then for your cinematic music volume, personally, I turn that bad boy all the way down to 0. No music allowed. I highly recommend turning on the enhanced headphone mode if you can. It does cost some money. The new pay-to-win feature in Call of Duty, of course. But if you're not interested, of course, leave it be. I do recommend it. And for my audio mix, we're currently using Home Theater. I've tested out a bunch of these. Home Theater is the one that I really enjoy the most so far. Depending on what kind of sound EQ settings you might have adjusted on your audio, you might need to adjust that slightly. Most of this stuff is pretty much default. Now, I am on PC, so I may have more settings than you guys, depending on if you're on console. But do what you can, and I guarantee it'll help. If you found this video helpful, make sure you leave a like and subscribe for more future Black Ops 6 content coming your way.